I think there's going to be pent up, RFPs that are going to drop. I was chatting with a group yesterday, a group of companies and small businesses, and they were saying the same thing, that they're starting to see the RFPs and they've got tight timelines attached to them, because now your fiscal year has been truncated. And so on the government side, they're going to have to get that spend done, because you're right, we're heading into holiday season here. If CEOs are doing the right thing, they're not asking them to work, over the holidays and dropping RFPs. They would never. You'll see some of that, but I think in January, game on. I think it's going to be a deluge of activity.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Future of GovCon. This is a weekly podcast to bring together experts from across the industry and look at what's happening today and how it's going to impact the future of our industry. I'm Jake Frazer. I'm the owner and CEO of Precision Talent Solutions. In leading one of the industry's top executive search firms, I get to talk to influencers every day. C-suite executives, board members, growth leaders, top government officials, military flag officers. And on this podcast, what we're doing is we're bringing in these experts from AI, from space, from medical, from logistics, from engineering. And we're sitting down and talking about what's happening in their specific area of the industry and how it will impact the future. So pour a cup of coffee and let's get started. Hey everybody, it's Jake with PTS. Welcome back to another episode of the Future of GovCon. We are indeed lucky to have with us one of the legends of government contracting, Mike Derrios, calling in to join us today. Mike, welcome to the Future of GovCon podcast.
Thanks so much for having me, Jake.
I've never bid on a contract with the State Department or even DHS, but I've heard your name for years, and it's been great to get to know you here over the past couple of months since as you've made a transition into the other side. So you got a great background and just a good way about you.
Yeah, I appreciate the the opportunity to chat with you and your audience. It's been a good transition, and I've got a lot of insight to share, and always happy to share it, because government contracting is I think, I'm biased of course, but it's, I think, one of the most important things that happens in the federal government. So happy to chat.
Super. So Mike has his own company now, Derrios Advisory Group. Check out his website, derrios.com. I mean, he's got some really cool stuff. He's got some AI tools he's working on. I think he's signed up as one of our precision experts, was at our matchmaking a couple of weeks ago. And we're happy to get Mike out and getting him engaged with industry. He's got a lot to give. He's just a great guy. His last job, just kind of a little bit of bio on Mike, was the Deputy Assistant Secretary for Acquisition and also the Senior Procurement Executive at the Department of State. You can correct me if I said that wrong. And a lot of people don't, they all know him from that, but he also had about 18 years in DHS, was one of the, I'm going to call it founders, but one of the guys that helped build DHS from scratch right after 9/11. So maybe we'll talk a little bit about that. But if you can guess, I mean, Mike has a tremendous amount of experience in government and government contracting, and has been kind of at the heart of a lot of what's been going on inside the State Department over the past few years. So we're lucky to have you here, Mike. Anything you would add on the bio side? Oh, you're an Air Force guy, right?
Started in the Air Force. Yep.
All right.
And did a little stint in private sector there as well after I left service. But yeah, I think you nailed it.
Yeah, let's go back. Let's talk about Mike growing up. I saw your post on LinkedIn, which I thought was very moving on Veterans Day. Maybe talk a little bit about growing up, what it was like to be a young Mike, and how you found your way into government.
Oh, wow. That's a good place to start, I guess. I tell people like most people, I kind of just fell into contracting, but there's a story behind that story. I'm not embarrassed to admit that I had a pretty challenging childhood. Grew up definitely in a impoverished environment, and was also for a period of time homeless in my teens. And so, that's kind of what really drove me to seek out military service. It's a long story, Jake, but I'm giving you the abridged version for sure. I wanted to make something of myself. I wanted to pursue education, and just would not have been able to do that without joining the military. I'll spare you, a lot of the, the tear jerking moments, I guess. It was a little challenging as a kid. Um, yeah, I went into the Air Force, gosh, 19 or 20, and, really enjoyed serving. Left service only because I was a single parent. I probably would have continued to be, in the military. I was actually, on an officer track, I obviously joined enlisted, but I had a lot of people encouraging me to go to officer training school. And that was something of interest, but as a single parent with full custody of my son, I just ended up saying, hey, it's probably best for me.
Hard life. Yeah.
Yeah. For me in the military to go ahead and I went into the Guard and did a couple years in the National Guard after I left active duty. But yeah, that's kind of how I ended up in the service. And
did you have family or the early exposure to the military, or you just kind of see that as a way out?
Well, I'm from the Hampton Roads area in Virginia, and so a lot of military bases. So I had a lot of exposure to military. Didn't necessarily have any, direct affiliations though. I looked at it as, an opportunity.
So did you get to serve overseas, or where were you based in the Air Force?
I was mostly domestic. Yeah, mostly domestic. Yeah.
And you were doing contracting, like you went in there and started learning the skill at an early age. Huh?
Absolutely. I mean, Air Force is one of the, at the time, it was the only branch of the service that allowed enlisted to do contract. Almost every other service, you had to be an officer. And so, I tell people all the time, I literally would not have, gotten into the field if it hadn't been for me joining. I'm going to say the right service, just in the sense of that, that ability to go into that career field. But I picked the MOS as I went into the service, and just never turned back.
Someone advised you to do that. I mean, what a great choice, right? Go into acquisition. Like, did someone say, hey, if I were you, would you go into acquisition, or you took your ASVAB or whatever they call it? And how did you?
So Jake, that's another interesting story. So, I, was down in Richmond, Virginia at the Military Entrance Processing Center. And it's kind of like, the herding cattle. I mean, they're just trying to get people in and out, and the folks that are processing you through, they don't have a lot of time to chat with you, So yeah, I had high HASVAB scores, and when it was my time to enter into the room, I had sat down, and the guy said, hey, you can have your pick of things, what are you interested in? And I said, well, I don't really know, a whole lot about, the different career fields. And so he starts just putting like binders in front of me. He says, well, check that one out. What do you think about being an interpreter? I said, oh, that's interesting. He's like, how about that one? You'll love this. It's this thing called IT. Now, this was back in the
90s, man.
Back in the early 90s, right? So I was like, oh, computers. Okay. He's like, well, how about this one? And literally, it was the third binder that he put in front of me. And he said, if it was me, if I'd take that one. You're dealing with, the government's money, you're buying stuff, it's business related. I think there's good opportunities there. And that's how it happened. I said, I'll take that one.
Where's that guy right now?
He's our guy. And then he just ushered me out, and the next guy came back in, after me. So that's how I picked this career field.
That's a great one. And the Air Force is good at it. I mean, they're, like you said, they're the only one. Well, they have the enlisted in, they have a career field just for acquisition. I think the Army guys, it's always like an additional duty they grow into after they've done their main, particularly for the officers. It's smart. It's super smart. Yeah. So you spent some time in the Air Force, single parent, learning the ropes of acquisition. What made you think to get out? What was that pathway out of the Air Force?
Yeah, so it was getting to the point where obviously the military, as I was, making rank and kind of almost being one of the more senior people in the squadron, they needed to start deploying me, right? I totally understood that. Being a single parent, I was just like, this isn't going to work, and so we kind of made a mutual decision there that, if I wanted to go into the Guard and continue my service there, I mean, my commander actually had to, put some personal skin in the game to make that happen, and he did. But yeah, it was for that reason, and only that reason. I just didn't think that I'd be deployable, and didn't think that that was fair to the service. I'd gotten the degree, knew I was going to be a little marketable on the outside.
Southern Illinois University.
Yeah,
Where the hell is that?
it's in Southern Illinois, Carbondale.
That's like across from Paducah or something, isn't it? Like,
Yeah.
or is that Indiana? I can't keep it straight. All right, well, good. And you went into like, I think it's good our audience knows that Mike Derrios was in industry for a couple of years. He hasn't always been the big guy with the big sharp pencil behind the desk. So how'd you work for khaki? Is that right? For a couple of
Yeah,
years?
I was with, I guess I'm supposed to say CACI, but I call it khaki too. Yeah, I was there for about 2 years, a little over 2 years. Worked on the standard procurement system program. So PD square, DoD was replacing all four, or the legacy systems for all four branches of the military, and moving to one standard contract writing system. Now, ironically, decades later, they've reversed course, and they're not doing that program anymore. But at the time, that was the move, and I started, when I left service, on that program. Did some good work there, and then moved to another. So I was just a senior consultant, and moved to another contract at DOT, and so I was helping in an e-learning organization there under the OST group when 9/11 happened, and was asked by the guy that I was supporting to because he had been kind of handpicked by Secretary Mineta to go stand up the contracting shop at TSA when it was first formed.
Crazy.
So he asked me to come over, and I did, and so that's how I started my civil service career in the government. When I got there at TSA, it was, less than 100 people at headquarters. They hadn't rolled out operations quite yet at BWI, which was the first federalized airport. I mean, it was very much in its infancy, and that was quite an experience as well.
Jumping ahead, aren't they going to go back and privatize TSA now?
Oh, I don't know.
Maybe. I've heard that somewhere. Anyway,
I mean, there's always talk about that. I don't know what the future holds there. I mean, there's always been a pilot program since the beginning of the agency, with a handful of airports that had to follow federal standards, but they were privatized contractors. So they've had that pilot program going on for quite a long time. Maybe it's probably not even a pilot anymore. I don't know how much growth they've had there, and I've heard chatter, but I don't know if that's going to happen or not.
I've heard it from a good. Yeah, all right. And I know that there's things you can't talk about, and I don't want you to talk about anything you can't. I know you're speaking as Mike Derrios and certainly not representing any form of the government, and I think we all get that, but we appreciate your perspective anyway. So just digging back into that time at CACI khaki, I mean, did that help inform anything for like in the future when you're in government? You think, well, when I was in industry, you got some takeaways from that?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, even though that was just a, relatively short period of time, definitely understood the contractor's perspective in terms of what it's like to respond to, government solicitations. And so, I'd spent, several years being the person putting out the RFPs and the RFIs with the short time frames, and just expecting that, well, industry will, they want this business, they'll respond, didn't really understand at that time. And a lot of people, I think, on the government side don't understand how challenging it is for industry to move through their decisioning. How do they get to a bid, no bid decision? What are all the steps that go into, trying to prepare a proposal? So I learned some of that, while I was on the industry side. And so I brought that perspective in with me when I joined civil service. And, I think it helped to inform my thinking about how the government should be, liaising with industry better, and just the need to open up that aperture in terms of communication when they're trying to do market research.
I think the empathy is important. In a creative world, you would have a requirement that anybody that works in government has to work in industry and vice versa. So you have some appreciation of what the other side is trying to do. It's all the same mission, right? And
Absolutely.
it should be empathy is important. And I'm glad you had that part of your career. I had 4 years in the Army, but it's shaped my entire career in GovCon, and I still speak all the acronyms. And, I could probably still shoot a 50 cal if I had to, but I'm not going. Yeah. So you're in TSA during must be crazy hectic times, building and building an agency, building DHS from the inside. Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, it was like working for a startup company. The only difference is that they actually had money, but they had a 1-year mandate from Congress. There was literally a 1-year mandate to federalize all the airports. That's something that the UK had been given 5 years to do, frankly, just to kind of offer a comparison there. It was crazy town, building the car as you drive it that doesn't do its service, frankly. Yeah. Taking contracts in from the FAA. So kind of taking over, the contracted service, turning that into, federalized operations. Every kind of contract you can think of, we were scrambling to put in place. You're building an agency. You're building an agency, and you're also trying to build a field footprint, an operational footprint at the same time. It wasn't just stand up the policy, stand up the oversight. It was roll out operations. It was everything.
Hiring people, just getting it up and running. Right?
Hire people. Yeah.
It's amazing. And were you doing ops, contracting, program management?
Contract. Yep. I was the third person hired into the Office of Acquisition back then. And they've probably got, I don't know, somewhere in the neighborhood of maybe 150, 160 folks, I would guess now. And I think TSA probably does close to about a $3 billion spend every year. But yeah, one of the first people there, those first 6 months were tough. What
would you say your greatest accomplishment was while you're at TSA?
So, I'm actually, I'm going to go in a different direction. So I had the opportunity to, so when I say that, I wouldn't say it was actually procurement related. I had an opportunity to be on both sides of the fence. So they sent me off to SES school. I was in the first cohort of the DHS SES candidate development program, and came back from that. Certified to become an SES. I wasn't an SES yet, but I had some fantastic leaders that realized that, I had the potential, obviously, because they put me in the program. But it didn't make sense to bring me back into the role that I had previously. And so I was blessed to be asked by the chief technology officer at that time to kind of switch over to the program side. And the administrator at the time, John Pistol, was interested in exploring a third-party option to expand TSA PreCheck. So I was asked to lead that effort, and I got quite an education about what machine learning algorithms were back then. And this was like 2010, 2011 timeframe. So yeah, I did some CRADAs, did some good work with a handful of organizations to test out some machine learning algorithms, and then also build a business case for third parties to do the enrollment, to augment the TSA's capacity to enroll. So yeah, I would say, and the administrator, after 2 years of that work, said yes. And getting somebody at the head of an agency to say yes to something it's a pretty big accomplishment.
Yeah. Great.
So yeah, I'd like to say that's probably my biggest contribution, was being able to help, that agency augment the capacity to build PreCheck.
Love to roll to an airport with you and get your feedback on what's going on. I bet you see a lot.
Yeah, yeah.
You left TSA, you went to the Coast Guard at a kind of an interesting time for the Coast Guard, right? Did you get recruited into that? Did you look for that job? How did you make that switch?
No, Jake, I tell people all the time, I was actually pretty content. You know, I love so after doing PreCheck, I was asked to promote it into an executive director position, and I was responsible for the passenger screening program at TSA. So again, program side. So the engineers worked for me, the budget analysts worked for me, and that was just an awesome program. I mean, it's all the technology at the airports that screens us as we go through the checkpoint. And loved it. Loved the interaction with industry. Loved the ability to build strategy to figure out how the technology needed to mature to support the airport security operations of the future. It was a great gig. Was not looking to leave, and frankly, was actually okay with not being an SES yet. A mentor of mine recommended that I throw in for the HCA job, the head of contracting activity job at the Coast Guard. It opened up, and he knew that I had the certification already, and strongly suggested that I throw my hat in the ring, and so I did, and that's how I got selected for that position. And yeah, that was an amazing opportunity because I came at a time where Coast Guard was then, back in 2015, they were getting plussed up, in terms of dollars, and going through really one of the largest recapitalization eras, that they had experienced. I would say now, with the money that they're supposed to be getting, about $24 billion. Oh my gosh, yeah. Now this era that they're entering into is going to eclipse, what we were doing. But at the time, I mean, was responsible for helping to drive the national security cutters, fast response cutters. We awarded what was then the largest contract for Coast Guard, the Offshore Patrol Cutter program. Had a hand also in working with Navy and helping to drive the Polar security cutter. So building an icebreaker for the first time in 40 years. So just really, really amazing work.
You're buying a lot of stuff too then, right? You're going from services to stuff.
Yeah, that's a good way to say it. Yeah. Coast Guard is definitely very asset heavy.
Yeah.
Yep. So I try to bring some of the best practices on the services side into, that world of work. Very different, in terms of how shipbuilding is done. But yeah, just try to offer perspective to lean out process, as best as I could.
5 years of the Coast Guard. I mean, it has its own culture, right? The Coast Guard culture it's kind of quasi-military, right? It's got its own.
I don't say quasi to them, but yeah. Yeah, no, it was a great culture. I same thing, Jake. I wasn't looking to leave. I'd found another home. I said, wow, this place is awesome. I mean, if you think about where this conversation started, right? You could have never told a homeless teenager,
Yeah.
I'd be sitting in a flag suite with, 2-star admirals, talking about, big contracting things. I'll offer this and I'll give you perspective about what it was like to make the transition. But yeah, one of the most important things I did at Coast Guard was that Offshore Patrol Cutter program. We did a lot of work to be able to turn on the production clen in the contract. And then 10 days after that, Hurricane Michael decimated the shipyard down in Florida. The shipbuilder was down in Florida, Panama City. And the last, I'd say almost a year, worth of work that I was doing at Coast Guard was all centered around, okay, so how are we going to salvage this? Because the Coast Guard had put a lot into that program. And we ended up leveraging a public law, that the Public Law 85804, I still remember it, that required a secretary level decision. to offer extraordinary contractual relief, is what it's called. In a fixed priced environment, you can't just throw money at a problem unless there's a national security imperative. And in this case, we were able to make the case that there was, but there's a lot of work that went into that. So that was the last thing that I did at the Coast Guard. And same kind of thing. Another mentor knocked on my door and said, "Hey, you might be ready for, the senior procurement executive job. And I think there's one opening up at State Department." And that's how it happened.
Great. Well, but for the audience out there, you always think of Derrios as the State Department guy, but what a great career inside DHS and several of the main agencies. And you hear what's going on with Coast Guard now, the funding. So he's a wealth of knowledge there. So let's talk about State Department. 5 years in the State Department. Were you the senior procurement executive the entire time? That was your role?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Talk about the job of the senior procurement executive.
Yeah. So it's a little unique at State Department. Or I guess has been unique at the State Department. So usually when you get to the SPE level, it's more about policy. It's more about working with OMB, OFPP, and the oversight bodies in Congress, and it's a heavy policy position usually, but the SPE also is responsible for selecting the heads of contracting activity, and so there's that nexus to operational contracting, and the SPE also has to sign and approve actions at a particular dollar threshold, and so your SPE is still involved in operational contracting, just usually not day to day. It was a little different at State Department because the head of contracting was a direct report to me, rather than like at DHS. Most of the HGAs work for the agency, and then there's a dotted line up to the SPE. In my case, the HGA was a direct report to me, just like the policy director was. So, that's it. I mean, it's also, you're responsible for the procurement system for the department. And what that really means is thinking about, all right, so how is the operation working? Where are there opportunities for, kind of like what I was doing at Coast Guard, but on a smaller level? How can we improve how the acquisition program works? What programs should we be putting in place for workforce development? What programs should we be putting in place for, process improvements, those kinds of things? So yeah, that's the role.
Okay. And then, so State Department has 10, 12 billion in spend ballpark, right?
Yeah.
What's the
average?
What's the breakdown between DS, OBO? Like how's that pie chart breakdown?
Yeah, so OBO is anytime you're dealing with the capital investment, projects, that's going to be your highest spend at an agency, and at State Department it was definitely OBO. Sometimes some years DS creeped up into the number one spot because they spent a lot of money on security equipment, local guard forces, worldwide protection services. So they're a large spender too. It was usually OBO number one and DS right on the heels in terms of how much they were spending. And then below that, it was either consular affairs or sometimes what's now called DT, diplomatic technology. So the old IRM organization. A lot of IT spend, obviously, at that department. Yeah. Those are your big four.
Okay. Maybe we'll talk about what that's going to look like in the future based on your view. Talk about, we got a lot going on right now at State Department, reorganization happening this year. What a year in 2025. And they're going to pick up some of the work and the people out of USAID. Is that right?
Yeah, that's actually already happened. This summer, that transition happened in July. And about 15% of the mission set from USAID transferred over. Secretary Rubio, moved that work into the department. And so you had a lot of offices, that were now absorbing new program activity, and then my old shop was responsible for servicing that, in terms of contracting and grants. So yeah, it represents what the math that we did, at the time. It looked like that 15% of mission transferring over was going to represent somewhere in the neighborhood of, maybe an additional 3 to 4 billion in annual obligations. Yeah. So it's really, State Department is now really kind of more along the lines of a $15 billion enterprise.
Wow. State Department growing in 2025. What missions? What's that 15%? What's moved over to State Department?
Yeah, so it's mostly global health and food programs. Vaccine programs have survived and lived on as well. So those are the two big areas: food and health.
Will they have to redo the GHSC acquisition?
Hard to say. Hard to say on that one. I'm not sure, and I will get into opining on where they're going with some of that, because it's still very fluid right now. I think that the offices are still trying to get their arms around it. I'm not sure that, acquisition strategies that maybe were in place, or, things that were in flight 6 months ago are still going to be, thought about in the same way going forward. So it's a little hard to say on that one, just because everyone on the program side, my old office's side, they're all trying to get their arms around it. So hard to say whether or not a particular, contract was going to be, recompete was going to happen the same way. Don't want to, it'd be premature for me to offer any perspective, I think, on that. But, your point about bringing people over. All the offices were able to snag a small handful of people, not a lot. And so I think, that's going to play out into, how some of these programs are structured going forward as well. I do think that you're going to see more oversight and strategy development at headquarters, whereas on the USAID side, like, a lot of stuff was happening in the field, So I think the department is going to try to, manage that a little differently than how it was done at USAID. And my old shop got about 40 folks on a temporary basis as well. That was the thing. All the people that came over from USAID, though, were temporary. So I don't know how that's going to play out in terms of longevity.
Yeah. You think that, so we got some continuity at least, right? I brought 40 people over. That's not nothing. There's some knowledge transfer coming over. And is there a remnant still of USAID that's closing out contracts? I mean, that didn't just vanish. There's still 85% that has to be wound down, right?
That's it. So, my old shop took over what they were calling the green list, that 15% of mission that would survive. There's a legacy organization that's now responsible for closing out that 85% of contracts. And my opinion, that's going to take a while to do. Termination work doesn't happen overnight. Yeah.
But that doesn't fall into State Department, and that stays.
No.
Okay. Legacy. Okay.
Right. So USAID is still an entity. It hasn't officially gone away. Much smaller organization, of course, and their trajectory, depending on how things play out, with Congress, the intent is to close that agency out, and so the 85% of work that's still on contract and grant will have to be, settled in terms of terminations, and that's going to be a lot of work. But yeah, that's what they're focused on.
All you lawyers out there, be listening to that. So the 15%, are they going to create a new directorate, or what would you call it, within State Department that's going to manage kind of humanitarian? You said food, health. I think that's how it'll be another.
That's it. Yeah, there's supposed to be a new undersecretariat that's established. I think it's going to be tied to the F Bureau, what they call the F Bureau at State Department. and their role, I mean, is really going to be front and center in this whole thing. Um, so yeah, I think that you know, state wants to see the work done a little differently, and you may have seen a global health strategy, America First global health strategy out in September. I mean, that gives you some insight into where they're going with it. So um, you're going to see bilateral agreements where state or the U.S. government is really working with the other international government, and the money is going to them versus state contracting directly with the NGOs, right? And so it's going to be a shift, significant shift. I'm not saying state will not ever contract with NGOs again, but I think you're going to see more activity flowing through that bilateral channel. And
Those
so,
countries will be doing the contracting directly.
right,
Yeah, that makes sense.
that's right.
What about
Yeah.
some of the big, larger, for the service contractors out there, the DIPs, the global caps? They seem to all kind of taking a knee during 2025. Do we see them standing back up and getting active again?
Yeah, as I was leaving, we were having some discussions about what a recompete of DIPS large was gonna be.
Yeah.
Yeah, so DIP small is still available as a contract mechanism, but large needs to be recompeted. And I hope that they really dig into the requirements and look at how they spent money on that vehicle previously, and put a lens on it, and really think about the right acquisition strategy. How do we go to market, for a recompete? But yeah, it's something that they're definitely going to have to contend with, because those services are critical. I mean, those wraparound services, especially overseas, are critical, and they're going to have a vehicle and a mechanism to get to the capabilities.
It would make sense. I mean, I remember it was DOS cap back before it became DIPS. This idea of having a kind of a mirror, State Department mirror of log cap, right?
Yeah, that's basically it. That's how I compared, DIPS as well. Is this sounds like log cap or looks like log cap? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that makes sense versus having these local providers and, get some, that makes sense. In Global Cap, they collapsed GPOI and AfriCap, and that was a busy contract probably during the last administration. You think it'll be used globally? I mean, there's a mission globally, not much of a mission in Africa right now.
Yeah, I think that there is going to be a push to examine scope and see where there's opportunities, outside of just AF. Yeah.
I thought it was a great program. I mean, AfriCap and GPOI did some good stuff, but obviously, I mean, Africa is not a priority, but those types of services would seem to be relevant in, areas of the Middle East and Asia, certainly around Taiwan and that problem set. So hopefully they're able to.
If there's scope available, they'll leverage it. I mean, you have to make those determinations and see if it makes sense. I think there's ceiling on the vehicle, so I think it'll all come down to are there legitimate scope determinations that can be made.
Plenty of competition and lots of capability there. So I've just figured 2025 has just been just hectic, right? Just it's been a year of uncertainty. I always say Q1 was shock and all. Q2 was watching the dust settle, see who's left, and Q3 it wound up being kind of getting settled on priorities. And then Q4 has been quagmire because of the government shutdown. Now that that's resolved we didn't have the end of fiscal year surge you normally have. At least we didn't see it, and most of our customers didn't see it. There was not a flurry of activity of awards and RFPs and at the end of the fiscal year. And then we went right into a shutdown. So there must be some pent up demand. Are we expecting to see kind of get through the at least Thanksgiving holiday, and which will be by the time we watch this, but are we expecting to see like kind of a year December Q1 push
on requirement? I think so. Yeah, I think there's going to be pent up, RFPs that are going to drop. I was chatting with a group yesterday, and they were telling me that same thing. They, group of companies and small businesses, and they were saying the same thing, that they're starting to see the RFPs, and they've got tight timelines attached to them, right? Because now your fiscal year has been truncated. And so on the government side, they're going to have to get, that spend done. Cause you're right. We're heading into holiday season here. If COs are doing the right thing, and they may not be able to because of operational needs, but if they're doing the right thing and being kind to industry, they're not asking them to work, over the holidays and dropping RFPs.
They would never.
You'll see some of that, but I think in January, game on. I think it's going to be a deluge of activity. Yep.
January game on day. I like that. Do they have enough KOs, COs, 1102s, whatever you want to call them? Is there enough capacity to get this contracting done? I mean, it seems like a lot of atrophy over the course of this year.
I am quite concerned about it, Jay.
Yeah.
This year, we saw attrition in the 1102 job series like never before. A lot of people took the DRPs or the VERAs if they were offered. There were RIPs, and normally, you don't touch the 1102 job series because it's always been historically understaffed. This was a bit of an anomaly year in terms of, staffing. So I am quite worried that a lot of agencies are not going to have the staffing to accommodate the demand signal,
which may accelerate pushing stuff into GSA and other GWACs, right? Because they just not got the capacity to let it out.
Yeah, I think that GSA is going to have some challenges attracting talent as well.
They got the same problem, right?
I think so. Yeah, I mean, in theory, again, the One Gov initiative and then contract consolidation. In a perfect world, it works for everybody because, the agencies can, offload those common goods and services and just focus on the mission work, the very specific mission work, the contracts that are pertinent to that. But I don't know that GSA, has the firepower on their side necessarily to accommodate all of it. They're making strides. I mean, I think they've got like 4 agencies now that they're trying to support. There's a whole lot more to go. And there's a lot of acquisition planning, I think, that they're going to have to do on their side to really, you want to do strategic sourcing right, and you want to, really leverage the opportunity that category management presents. You have to be able to forecast the need across the entire federal landscape for whatever category of good and services it is that you're trying to consolidate. Otherwise, I worry that if GSA doesn't do that act planning with the agencies, they're just going to be buying it in a disaggregated fashion, today. So that won't help. That won't create cost savings, in my opinion. But everybody across the board is hurting for talent.
And I wish someone would get in the talent business, but no, I have an idea on that. But I guess the other problem with that with GSA is so much of what State Department does is international, and that's not the bread and butter for GSA to be able to support OCONUS or national programs, right?
I think that's right. I mean, again, I can only speak to the activity that I had going on and the negotiations that I was having with GSA before I left. Not sure where things will go now, but that was the case that we were making. Is that even if it's bought domestically, I mean, this touches an international mission set, and we have an international presence. We've got GSOs that are overseas that can help with contract admin. So it just makes sense for the vast majority of the contract spend and portfolio at state to kind of stay at state. But there were absolutely things that should go over to GSA, in that bucket of common goods and services. I just don't know that it'll be as high of a percentage as maybe some other agencies.
Yeah. Theory, it sounds good. Talk for the layman or those of us that can't keep up with it all. I consider you an acquisition expert more than a State Department expert. Talk about, just quickly summarize what are the main changes for the revolutionary FAR overhaul? If I'm a government contractor, change is good and there's got to be an opportunity. How do you take advantage of it?
Yeah, I think, what you're going to see is they've leaned out what's regulatory, and the things that are that offer latitude, are being pushed into guides. And I think that we're going to go into, so in theory, I like it, I think that it offers contracting professionals a little more leeway. I think that contractors are going to have to be very mindful of compliance, especially in this next year, because they're going to go into rulemaking. There's going to be a public comment period. I would encourage your listeners, if they're in the GovCon leadership space, take advantage of that public comment period. I think there's going to be a robust, volley of, comments, and that will inform the final product, frankly, in a good way. But yeah, while you're, I think it's going to take them an entire year, frankly, to get through the rulemaking. I think we're going to be in this kind of period of somewhat ambiguity, where
territory, right?
Say again?
It's a new territory, right? It's a new front.
It is. Yeah. The deviations are all there. Contracting professionals, should be operating in accordance with the new language. But it's culture. You got some folks that will kind of just naturally want to gravitate back to the way that they've always done it, especially if in the guides there's latitude, right? So I think that you might have an inconsistent application, especially for this next year, and I think that could create some compliance headaches for industry. So they're gonna have to really be focused on. Yeah. Is this old language? Is this new language in this RFP? I mean, yeah. But in general, I think that the other thing I would offer is that I'm a little worried that there'll be, some protest activity, because companies will be concerned about how the new reg is being applied, But yeah, I think once we get through this next year, and things level out, it in theory, giving flexibility and latitude to a CEO is a good thing.
Yeah. Before we look ahead, I want to ask one more thing that's been on my mind. Again, I consider you an acquisition expert. The focus on small business, the 8A program. Okay, I've read on that, but what's the applicability? What do you see the impact on the ANCs, the Alaska Native Corporations, the tribal 8As? Do you see that? I mean, traditionally they've been seen as a kind of an easy button for government. For direct awards based upon the thresholds. What do you see happening? What's your prediction on impact of this SBA audit on the ANCs and the tribal 8As?
Yeah, I'm going to be following that one pretty carefully as well. I think that agencies are going to continue to use the the ANC program, the 8A program for. I don't see that not happening. And the biggest thing in my mind is the opportunity now to take something that was locked up sole source and open it up, at a recompete. So that opportunity has not really been there in the past. And I think that could be a game changer for some agencies that, if they are concerned about performance, or if they had concerns that, hey, maybe something new has happened in the market, or hey, I want price competition. There'll be the opportunity to potentially, compete those things, whereas previously it was just, well, it's locked up. So I think that is a game changer, and that's something that all 8As are going to have to contend with, whether they're ANC or not.
They're going to learn to compete, bottom line, which is.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. It opens a new talent set for them, because the business development process for direct awards versus fair and open is different. So, okay. Good insights. So let's fast forward. I've asked all my guests to do this. It's 2028, 3 years from now. And let's not opine upon administration change yet, but just in general, what's the State Department acquisition look like? what programs are out there? What's driving the market? What's this new kind of fold in of aid and development look like? What's happened with DIPS and Global Cap and some of the big programs 3 years from now?
Yeah. So, I mean, the acquisition has now been elevated to a bureau for the first time. So that's something that, I had been working on for 5 years, frankly, to try to get done. And I was really happy to see that the politicals in 2025 thought that it was a good idea. So now you're going to have global acquisition kind of having a seat at the table. And I think that that's a good thing for the department's acquisition program now and in the future, especially in the future, because I think that right now it's going to be a bit of a building, period. So how does this work, But I think that the way that global acquisition can bring data to the table to inform thinking, the way that they, I think, will now be able to roll out business policy that can help not just technical acquisition, procurement policy, but business policy in terms of shaping how State Department does its acquisition, like really integrating in methodical procurement planning cycles, for example, right? All of that stuff will contribute and should contribute to better outcomes and should stick, frankly, I think. In terms of where the programs are headed, I think state for the next couple of years I don't think this is any surprise to anyone. I think it's going to have very lean appropriations. I think most of the money is going to go to Department of War. I'm trying to get better at my vernacular and stop name defending. But DHS, FAA is going to get some money. So I think that, the civilian agencies especially are just going to have lean times. And, how that plays out into some of the big recompetes that I think the department will be doing. Well, you may see smaller ceilings, on the vehicles, may see a little less, task order activity for sure. And, every agency is really starting to build into its DNA these days, this concept of, cost efficiency. And I, frankly, I'm all in on that. I've always thought as a career procurement person that, and program person as well, that, hey, we need to be good stewards of the taxpayer's dollar.
Absolutely.
And I think that that's going to be, that seed has been planted. And that's something that I think can and will continue on regardless of party going forward. So I think you're going to see more scrutiny on requirements and more scrutiny on, hey, so have we gotten into the negotiating room, with this company and talked about the rates? Or are we just blindly accepting, escalation, or are we challenging those things?
Yeah.
So I think you're going to see a lot of that, obviously for the next 3 years, and fast forwarding. I think even beyond that, I think that the stage has now been set for that to just be a part of doing business with the government.
And in the non-zero, let's call it even a 50-50 change, chance of a change of administration in 2028, 3 years from now. What do you think companies, let's say it goes back to the Democrats, do you see substantial change in policy within the State Department?
So in terms of,
policy, probably, but focus.
Yeah.
Priorities, probably, yeah.
Yeah, I think,
will they bring back USAID? Will they bring back more foreign assistance? Will we?
I'd say a lot of the changes that you've seen, Jake, have been seismic. And so, these have not been subtle changes by any means. I call them seismic. And so I think the stage is set for State Department to, in the future, manage foreign aid very differently than it has in the past. Will there be a desire for some programs to come back? I think so. But I think the way that the business is being done, I frankly think that is something that Democrats would probably get behind as well, in terms of just managing the relationship better with the other countries and having them put a little more skin in the game. I think that's going to settle and gel.
Yeah.
I think some programs could potentially come back under a new administration for sure, though.
You got one word. What's your gut feeling about the future? Like the future, you just stepped out. How do you see the State Department in the future? What's your gut say? One word.
One word for State Department. I'm thinking about this in terms of big policy, little policy, just culture. I'm thinking about all these things. I'm going to go with the word malleable, because I think that the reason I say that is because I think that your foreign policy apparatus going forward, regardless of party, is going to have to conform's not the right word, but just be flexible and nimble to adapt to wherever the administration's priorities are and how the administration wants State Department to interact in the interagency, right? So, there could be times when Department of War is out there leading in more of a different kind of posture, and state has to adapt to that, or vice versa, right? We don't know what's going to happen with USAID. I mean, I guess, it's technically not over until it's over, and so will the agency continue to survive on? Question mark for me. I don't know, but state will have to be malleable, right? Yep. State will just have to be nimble enough to adjust to, all of these types of changes. Who knows? Maybe there's a push to have state step into to this role, like all in, right? And don't. I'm not trying to stir up any stuff here, but you've got USAID wasn't the only outfit that was in that space. You've got some other outfits, government outfits that are kind of in that space. Maybe there'll be a push for state to take even more of it on. So with all of these unknowns, I think that your
malleable
foreign policy apparatus is got to be malleable. And then, that's not even taking into consideration what's happening globally, right? And just all of the things that are happening in the world, and how State Department is going to have to think differently about how it interacts, with our partners overseas, and what does partnership look like going forward in an increasingly globalized, world. So anyway,
good word.
Valuable.
It's a good word. That's awesome. Mike, thanks so much for your time, man. You're a good guy. You're a wealth of knowledge. I think for our audience, I learned a lot today. Hopefully people got a good takeaway. Again, get up with Mike Derrios. I think it's info@derrios.com. Reach out to us. He's one of our experts if you want us to help. Mike, look forward to seeing you around. I know it will. And to our guest, thanks for coming in for another podcast episode, The Future of GovCon. We'll be back next week with another episode. Spread the word, share it with your friends, put it on social media. We got a really good thing going. We'll see you guys next week. All right, so thanks for joining me on another episode of The Future of GovCon. I hope you enjoyed today's conversation and some of the bold predictions. If you did, take a second, share it on your social media, subscribe on YouTube. If you have any ideas for future guests or topics you'd like to have covered, hit me up on LinkedIn. I'm always there. And you can always learn more about precision talent solutions at pts.careers. Look forward to seeing you next week on our next episode.